And so you start looking around and remembering that there were 40 million Muslims in the first census taken. And then later on a census is taken again and there's only so many million. Where did they go? Where did they go? Did they just disappear into the vicissitudes of time? They had no time machine back then. There couldn't have been mass migrations because the gene pool isn't accounted for the genetics of all the people that would have gone. Where would they have gone to? And then you remember the extermination campaigns, the Cultural Revolution, and all these other things that happened, where there were these smiling Chinese men holding a red book in their hand, grinning on newsreel footage, burning messages to the ground. Everything that wasn't Chinese culture had to be destroyed. 40 million. 12 million Muslims, basically in the Balkans, Albania. Where are the Hungarian Muslims, the pre-Hitler Hungarian Muslims? Wiped out. There was a masjid not far from Brno Inn where Hitler was born. Where's that? It's gone. Wiped out, exterminated. Just like someone just taking a towel and just wiping it over a dirty counter. Gone. Also during this time, for a very important point, Muslims were responsible for one of the largest episodes of saving Jews from extermination in the Balkans. Thousands of Jews were saved by Muslims by hiding them in their basements in the Balkans. A good source where you could read more about this could be World War II in the Balkans, which is a collection of several different authors. And you'll find about several citations, 6 or 7 citations of Muslims saving Jews in World War II. Right? This taking place. Ultra-Orthodox rabbis being hidden. People's lives being spared. Yeah, those people are kuffar. But it's not our job to exterminate all kuffar. That's not our point. That's not what's been revealed to us. We've been told to take jizya, not exterminate. And Muslims were able to make that difference. Now, some can't. But we were right thinking back then. Right thinking was there back then. The United States, beating Nazi Germany to the punch by 6 months, used atomic energy first in the modern warfare setting, dropping atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Had the Germans been first, it would have been a hydrogen bomb dropped on London that would have ended the war and not the US in the Pacific, because the Germans were hastily working on a hydrogen bomb. And some cases point to the possibility that they were using a neutron bomb, which is where you drop that over a city and it just kills the carbon-based life like animals and people. The Germans were far ahead. That's why at the end of World War II, curiously enough, all these German scientists disappear into Russia. And all of a sudden Russia starts jumping up in their science. Some scientists disappear into the United States and you have the stealth bomber created. Oh, that's strange. It looks similar to a bomber that was designed by the Germans in the 40s. Coincidence? No, not a coincidence. Same technology. Their abortion technology transferred to the United States. Antenatal technology transferred to the United States. The vigor that those guys go about with exterminating small children before they're even born, you can almost hear the Sieg Heil in the room. That's how vigorous they go about it. And the United States has made the murder of children and abortion, it's made it an art form where you can't even call it what it really is now. You have to call it, well, I'm going to terminate the pregnancy. Sounds like whether or not to, have a goat in your barn or not to have a goat in your barn. Should we terminate it? Shall we keep it? Like you found a small dog that came home with you. Shall we keep him? And they make it jovial and light. And it's not a light matter. There's a video that was done by an abortion doctor who had a change of heart. And he decided to show the world what really happens in abortions. It was shown at my elementary school. And the amount of projectile vomiting, I will spare you the numbers. But people all of a sudden had to rethink themselves. It's a video called the silent scream. The silent scream. And the abortion doctor actually walks you through the process, shows you on the screen what you're going to see, shows you the equipment that he would used to use for committing his atrocities. And it is absolutely horrific. He actually shows you on the screen, not real time, but one of the abortions that have been done in the past. He says, and if you look on the screen, he says, you can see the child's actually trying to get away from the vacuum tube that's been put in. He says, you see this part that's open here? And he's pointing to it on the screen. He says, that's its mouth. It's screaming. You want to talk about abortion? You have to talk about it properly. And all this vacuum tube and ripping off the limbs and partial birth where as it's halfway out, you can still kill it because it's not a fully viable human being yet because it hasn't breathed its first breath of air. You have to thank Barack Obama and others for bringing this in. You have people 9 months. 9-month late-term abortion. It's in the 9th month. Get it out, get rid of it. 8th month, get it out, get rid of it. It's not a full human being yet anyway. It's halfway out, bust its head open with a metal mallet. It's dead. And these people are going to talk to us about human rights? No, they're doing something more than just flooding our countries with dope. They're doing the dope. Because if you come to that type of realization, and with the devastation that you're doing, something's not processing. And that's part of what was happening with them. Now, the United States, keen for souvenirs, brought back pickled South Asian penises, genitals, heads, ear necklaces, and even heads for kickball for use in the continental United States. This was in keeping in their consistent brutality as demonstrated in places like today's Hawaii, Alaska, the Philippines, and other places that would receive a visit from what Imam Ahmed Shakir called today's Tatars. The State of Israel was born in 1365, and not long after came Pakistan, a nation opposed as being a divider of the Muslims by many scholars. For those that would like further information on Americans' taking of genitals and slaughtering and general decapitation, there's a book you might want to read. It's called The American Experience in World War II. It's by Walter L. Hickson, Hixson. And the part about the genitals and necklaces and souvenirs, that's from pages 56 to 65. It's absolutely daunting reading. Share it with an American friend next time you get a chance. Having that dinner guest over that wants to talk with you about democracy, pull that down from the shelf. You want to talk to us about your high horse that you get on? Let me show you something in here. This was only 60 years ago. And you still do it now because we have cases of it happening in Iraq. You want to get on your high horse and talk about what Muslims did this and Muslims did that? Alhamdulillah, you're the one with the problem, not us. We don't make necklaces out of people's ears and their genitals and use bearskin rugs from the skin on their back. We as Muslims are a lot of things. Some of us are sinful, some of us don't do this, some of us don't do that. But subhanAllah, we're not cannibals and sociopaths. We have some humanity, even in this case today, where there's so much decline. Now, the State of Israel became a nation the same time as Pakistan, only months apart. And the same excuses were used for creating it. We need to create a homeland. We've got to start off, we've got to make a homeland for these people. First, they'd fan the flames of nationalism. So there was the Sind uprisings. The Punjabis didn't want to live with the Sindhis. And then they said, well, we've got to move, we're all Muslims. And they moved them into this secular state. Although Sheikh Ahmed Chowdhury had said that if the national language was made Arabic, in a generation, the whole population will be literate in Arabic and they should push that forward. No, shove them out of the way, put in Urdu. And we're still at Surat al-Lazina today. And I say that with the utmost seriousness because they cut off the ability of what would have made it possible for Muslim peoples in the Indian subcontinent to access the texts to verify what was happening in their countries. But now you have this Urdu barrier in the way, and it sometimes blocks people from understanding Islam because of certain words in Urdu that have been carried over in Arabic, but their meaning has been kept. I remember a brother telling me once, a noble brother, Allah bless him, he's one of those I consider close to me, Hafid Naveed. And he said to me one day, he said about the word darura. In Arabic, darura consists of three things. Something is a darura if you're in danger of losing your life, going to jail, or losing a limb. He said, but darura in the sense that we use it can sometimes mean, or zarura can just sometimes mean just buying shoes, or I have a zarura where I have to buy this, or I have totally changed the Sharia definition of things. So when you talk with someone now and say, oh yes, this is a darura, it becomes anything that they need. I gotta smoke the cigarettes, it's darura. It's darura, I have to do it. I have to buy 7 houses that aren't mine that I can't ever pay for, and I got 12 of them on mortgage, and another one I've just done a subprime mortgage. It's darura. What can I do, akhi? Subhanallah. Inna Allah ghafur rahim. Right? And this is what's happened. Because by taking the language of Sharia, ripping it away from its context, you make it impossible for the people to make sense of the actual revealed law. The same thing happened to the Arabs. Stripped Algerians away, showed them French programming, wouldn't even allow teaching of Arabic with the exception of 1 hour a week, 2 hours a week. That's what the French did. So you've got Algerians sitting there speaking Arabic, but thinking in French. And their understandings of the Sharia totally based on a contrived Arabic that was made by hack writers in the United Kingdom. I'll ask you this and you answer me this question. What are Coptic Christians who speak in Copt, what are they doing writing out the modern Arabic dictionaries? Because they did. The Ilyas War Tibet dictionary, they wrote that out. And Arabs will use that. And by doing that, young school kids from a young age are learning that language. Do you think your English would be up to par if you were given the whole Dr. Seuss series to study as part of your English program? We're going to just have you focus on Dr. Seuss and the Cat in the Hat. This is your English lit book. Of course you're going to be not the same creature as before. You won't even remember, and your parents, it creates this divide between parents from the generation of before and the generation after. And you can see it even among some Muslim brothers and sisters that are Asian. There's like this divide between the grandparents and the parents because the grandparents and the parents, their Urdu is one way, but the children, it's been affected in another way. Even the Arabic of the grandparents is different to the Arabic of the grandchildren, and they can't communicate. So it creates this false dichotomy. And this is later on, these Western powers create what's called the teenager. Previous to their creation of this word teenage, there were no teenagers. There weren't. You were either a child and you were growing into adulthood, or you were an adult. But they created something called a teenager, and they created these social constructs that created social pressure. Oh, he's a teenager. He's going through puberty in his teenage years. You have to cut him some slack. So he's a teenager. He's going through his development. He's staying at home. You can't offer him a job. He has all these frustrations and all these other things. He's a teenager. He's going through his phase. Right? So you have to look at these things in their proper perspective, and it's pretty terrifying. Now, from 1369 to 1400, the free officers of Egypt removed King Farouk from power in 1369. Gamal Abdel Nasser, whose code name was Uwais to the CIA, there's a really good book called The Philosophy of Revolution, which is about the Egyptian takeover and the hand that they played in, even though they knew that Nasser and the others were studying in the Soviet Union. They knew that. Still helped them. He'd completed his studies. Gamal Abdel Nasser, codenamed Uwais to the CIA, had completed his studies in the Soviet Union and then later Sandhurst Military Academy in the United Kingdom, along with Muammar al-Qaddafi, King Hussein of Jordan, Saddam Hussein of Iraq, Anwar Sadat, and Muhammad Naguib of Egypt. All these people went to Sandhurst. If you wanted to actually find out, did Iraq have weapons of mass destruction, go to the Americans, ask them for the receipts. They sold them to them. You guys have the receipts from the 1980s? Yeah, we've got them in the cash register over here. They'd have them. They knew what Saddam could and couldn't do because they trained him. They trained Gaddafi. They trained Nasser. They trained Sadat.